Welcome to the Explainer. So let's just dive right into it. Today we're tackling the dense, often confusing terminology of the community college system. Look, if you're a new faculty member or honestly just someone curious about the inner workings of higher ed, the language they use, well, it can feel a bit like staring at this incredibly complex architect's blueprint written entirely in some ancient bureaucratic language, right? But here's the thing, and this is absolutely crucial. We're going to decode this blueprint together today. Because understanding that structure, that's exactly what empowers educators to build something truly amazing. By the end of our time together, we're going to transform what feels like a notoriously dry glossary into your ultimate everyday tool belt for student success.
Now, entering a new academic bureaucracy, it often feels like you're just drowning in an overwhelming alphabet soup of acronyms and policies. It is definitely intimidating at first glance, but mastering these terms isn't just about crossing your T's and dotting your I's on the paperwork. These concepts actually provide these sturdy, unshakable pillars for guiding your students. They literally describe exactly how courses are approved, organized, delivered, and communicated across the board.
So here's our roadmap for this explainer. 1. Decoding official curriculum documents. 2. Exploring course modalities. 3. Understanding course lengths. And finally, 4. Teaching and program support. Simple as that.
All right, let's kick things off with part 1, decoding official curriculum documents.
Before a single student even steps foot into a classroom, a tremendous amount of architecture has already been laid down. The biggest umbrella term you're going to encounter for all of this is curriculum. Think of the curriculum as the overarching grand design. It's the organized educational plan for exactly what students are expected to learn. We're talking the whole shebang here: courses, academic programs, learning outcomes, content, assignments, and graduation requirements. And what's really, really important to take away from this is that curriculum doesn't just, appear out of thin air. It is painstakingly developed and approved through an established faculty-led process. You and your peers, you are the architects.
So let's zoom in and see how this builds into specific classes with our very first major acronym, the COR, or Course Outline of Record. Simply put, this is the official, approved document that defines a course. If you need a rapid-fire definition, here it is. The COR is the official, unchangeable structural blueprint for your specific class.
Now, what's really fascinating here is just the sheer amount of heavy, mandated requirements packed into that single core blueprint. It lays out the course title, the catalog description, the exact units, instructional hours, prerequisites, student learning objectives, course content, and even the methods of both instruction and evaluation. Now, as an instructor, you absolutely have the creative freedom to personalize exactly how you teach the course, but you've got to remain completely consistent with these officially approved rules. Think of it like this: you can decorate the house however you want, but you cannot move the load-bearing walls.
Okay, zooming back out slightly, we hit another rapid-fire definition, the POR, or Program Outline of Record. So if the COR defines a single course, the POR describes an entire degree, certificate, or academic program. It outlines the whole program's purpose, the required courses, elective options, and the recommended sequence to take them in. Basically, it shows how individual courses string together into an approved, logical sequence designed for a student's ultimate transfer to a university or direct entry into the workforce.
And this brings us to a really crucial showdown: the core versus the syllabus. The core establishes the approved overarching structure of the course, right? But your syllabus, that translates the core and all those college policies into a practical, day-to-day guide for your specific section. The syllabus is where you specifically outline your practical expectations. This is where you lay down the law, in a friendly way, of course, on attendance, grading practices, late work, participation, and even modern issues like the use of artificial intelligence. If questions or disputes pop up later down the line, clear documentation in your syllabus is exactly what helps your dean support you.
Moving right along, let's jump into Section 2, Exploring Course Modalities.
So here's where we transition from the theoretical blueprint on paper to how the course is actually built, delivered, and experienced by students in space and time. Let's break down the core modalities you absolutely need to know. First up, asynchronous learning. This relies on established deadlines rather than shared meeting times. Students complete videos, discussions, and assignments on their own schedule before those deadlines hit. But side note, asynchronous does not mean self-paced or completely without instructor interaction. In contrast, synchronous learning means everyone is participating together at a scheduled time, usually through a live online platform like Zoom. And of course, in-person means students and the instructor meet face-to-face at a scheduled physical location. Though, online resources might still be used for things like grades or announcements.
Now, I want to specifically call out the hybrid modality here because it can be a little tricky. A hybrid course intentionally combines that scheduled in-person instruction with required online learning. So the crucial point to remember is that it's a structural blend. Online work officially replaces instructional time that would normally happen in the physical classroom. That online portion might be asynchronous work, or it could be scheduled synchronous meetings, but it is explicitly replacing traditional seat time.
All right, on to Section 3, Understanding Course Lengths.
Just as modality dictates the where and how, course length dictates the when. And pacing drastically affects the delivery of your approved academic blueprint. Here we're looking at full-term versus short-term courses. A full-term course runs for the college's standard academic term, usually a 16-week or 18-week semester. The work is distributed evenly across that whole block of time. A short-term course, however, might be condensed into just 4, 6, 8, or maybe 12 weeks. But here is the most important takeaway of this entire section. Short-term classes contain the exact same approved content, assessments, and academic expectations as full-term courses. The rigor doesn't change one bit. The students are just completing the work at a much, much faster pace.
And finally, we've made it to Section 4, Teaching and Program Support.
So we have our blueprint, our modality, and our timeline. Now, how do we actually ensure students succeed once they're living inside your academic structure? Well, this brings us to UDL, or Universal Design for Learning. The core philosophy of UDL is perfectly captured in this phrase right here. Anticipate differences instead of waiting for barriers. UDL is this incredible framework that encourages instructors to provide multiple ways for students to engage, access information, and demonstrate what they know right from day one. And let me be totally clear. UDL absolutely does not mean lowering your academic standards, not at all. It means creating multiple, accessible pathways for diverse learners to reach those exact same high standards.
Another massive pillar of program support, especially when we talk about career education, is the advisory committee. This is basically a group of industry professionals, employers, and subject matter experts from outside the college. Think of them as a real-world compass. They provide guidance on workforce trends, they recommend emerging technologies, and they identify exact employment expectations, so you know precisely what skills your students need to actually get hired out there. They provide vital recommendations, while the official curriculum and budget decisions remain safely within the college's established approval processes.
Okay, we've covered a whole lot of ground today. But if there is one golden rule to take away from the faculty handbook, it's this quote right here. When you are uncertain about curriculum, course policies, modality requirements, or student expectations, begin with the approved COR and consult your dean, department, curriculum representative, or instructional support team. Look, whenever you feel lost in that alphabet soup we talked about earlier, just return to your foundational blueprint, the COR, and simply ask your team for help. It is so important to remember that you don't have to figure all this out alone. Seriously, ask for help.
And that brings us to the end of our explainer. We've decoded the bureaucracy and shown how these terms really form the load-bearing walls of your teaching. But you know, the walls are really just the beginning. Your course blueprint is set by the college, for sure, but how will you design your syllabus, use your modalities, and pace your class to creatively invite every single student in? How are you going to build a truly inclusive, supportive environment within that rigid structure? That right there, that is the true art of teaching. Keep that question echoing in your mind as you design your next class. Thanks so much for learning with me today, and I'll see you next time.